second. All right, the 2 minutes are up. If your vote has not yet been sent, keep on working on it. We're going to go to trustees' report. Loyd?
Thank you, Bishop. Hello, Great Plains Annual Conference. My name's Loyd Hamrick. I'm the chairperson of your conference board of trustees. I thought last year was rough, but this year is starting to stack up to be just like it was last year. But it's exciting. Before you in your workbook, my report is in there on page 46 and 47. And since the writing of this report, there's been some other issues that has come up that needs to be reported to you. In April, right after the writing of this report, we received word from the Trinity Community Church, which is a United Methodist Church in Kansas City, that they'll be closing their doors June 31st. So April 16th, we decided to do a walkthrough to kind of get some kind of guidance and to formulate some kind of course of action that we want to take in the church. Since we've been there and looked at it, we've been speaking with or communicating with Richard Chamberlain of Newark, Krubb, and Zimmerman of Kansas City, our agent that's been helping us sell property in the Kansas City area. So we've asked Richard to kind of go and put some feelers out for what kind of activity we might be able to get for the church. Right now, we really haven't had a whole lot going on, but we also have been in communication with the Kansas Area United Methodist Foundation Incorporated. There's a couple loans out to that organization on the church. And right now, like I said, we're in communication with them to work out an agreement on maintenance and the sale and the expectation of the proceeds for Trinity. So that is in progress and not totally settled yet, but we're in communication. The next item is the Wichita District resident in Wichita. Got an email from Mitch Reese saying that he and his wife had bought a house in Wichita, or going to buy a house in Wichita, and would be moving out of the Wichita resident in Wichita. So as of June the 1st, I believe Mitch is out of the house now. Is that right, Mitch? You are out of the house? Okay. So we will be putting this property up for sale and putting it on the market June the 1st, utilizing our agent in Wichita that's sold properties for us, Kelly Kimmitz of JP Wygand. She's very aggressive, and we feel confident that we're not going to have any problem selling the resident. It's a beautiful home. It's in a great location, and the market in Wichita is real good, so we have no issues, or we don't think we have any issues as far as selling that property. Finally, today we come to the issue of disaffiliation of the local church from the United Methodist Church. You have received, I hope by now, a green sheet that's entitled Proposed Formula and Procedure for the Calculation of Each Local Church for Rata Share and Aggregate Obligations to the annual conference. And it's got a C up in the right-hand corner. So here to discuss this, there's no way that I'm going to be able to stand here and tell you all about this. But I want to ask Scott Brewer if he wouldn't mind come up and address this issue.
Gee, thanks, Loyd.
Yeah. You're welcome.
The United Methodist Trust Clause has been in place since the 1790s. And it stipulates that all property owned by a local church is held in trust on behalf of the United Methodist Church as a denomination. Should a church cease to be a worshiping congregation of the United Methodist Church because of closure, abandonment, or otherwise, control of all of its property and assets transfers to the annual conference's Board of Trustees, whether the board. At the 2019 General Conference, delegates passed legislation. You heard about this a little while ago. It creates a new paragraph, 2553, that for the first time authorizes a pathway for congregations to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church and retain all their property and assets through a release by the annual conference of the trust clause. You can find that disciplinary paragraph as well as a brief and pertinent excerpt from the Judicial Council ruling 1379 on the conference website at greatplainsumc.org/disaffiliation. That document provides you with the essentials of the process and the requirements that all churches and all annual conferences in the denomination must follow in conducting a disaffiliation process. We have limited time today, and so we are not going to go through all the steps of that process in detail, and I will tell you there are many. But we do want to present and need to present a proposal that you will formally consider and debate on Saturday morning. Within paragraph 2553 are requirements of certain financial obligations that must be paid by a church to the annual conference in full prior to the date of disaffiliation. Those requirements include full payment of all mission shares apportioned to the church in the previous 12 months, full payment of all mission shares to be apportioned to the church in the next 12 months, and the church's pro rata share of the conference's unfunded pension liability as determined by Westpath, our denominational pension manager, using, quote, market factors similar to a commercial annuity provider, unquote. Yes, that's a mouthful. The purpose of the trustees' proposal, which again is printed on the green paper with a C in the upper right-hand corner, is to propose a formula by which to determine each church's share of the Great Plains Conference's total unfunded pension liability. Many of you may have heard over the years, and it is true, that the Great Plains Conference pension obligations are more than adequately funded. This is very true. You might assume that because of that fact then, the pension liability included in this disaffiliation price would be zero. You would not be correct. That is not true. When we typically speak of pension funding, it's on what we call a funding basis, which in part assumes that if there's a financial downturn like in 2008, 2009, the conference can go back to churches and ask for extra contributions to ensure there are adequate funds to keep the promises that we've made to our clergy, just as we did in the 2009 recession. The new paragraph 2553, however, requests that Westpath calculate a net liability using, quote, market factors similar to a commercial annuity provider. So what does that mean? It assumes that total pension liabilities will be higher because our populations will live longer. It assumes that returns on investments will not be quite as good as we assume with our funding basis calculations. Finally, it assumes that that the level of funding necessary to keep our promises will be 110% of this total, more conservatively calculated liability. Why? Because if a church leaves the denomination through disaffiliation, the assumption is that the Great Plains Conference will not be able to go back to them and ask for more money. Periodically, we receive calculations of this liability from Westpath. This liability includes the defined benefit portion of our pension plans, including the pre-1982 pension plan, pensions accrued under the ministerial pension plan that have already been annuitized, and the defined benefit portion of our current plan, the Clergy Retirement Security Program. Here are the current assets and liabilities calculated upon the market basis. As you can see, the total liability for the conference as of the beginning of this month is $79,489,782. The Board of Trustees proposes to you a methodology for calculating each church's share of this liability. It includes two factors: the 3-year average of apportioned mission shares and the current plan compensation, that being salary plus housing, as established in the clergy compensation form that every pastor signs. The Board of Trustees, in their conversation 2 weeks ago, the trustees considered several different options and determined that the combination of mission shares and plan compensation offers a balance between assigning the bulk of liability to those churches who have the greatest capacity to pay, with assigning it to those who accrued the bulk of the liability. Once the annual conference has approved a formula, and we've updated liability calculations from Westpath, which we expect this September, we will formally notify each church of its estimated obligation for disaffiliation and provide a summary of the disaffiliation process by the Great Plains Conference Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Scott, for that information.
So as you can see, we're asking you to please prayerfully read this document. If you have any questions, please submit them to the secretary's table here in the front of the room, and we will provide an answer before the proposal is formally considered and debated on Saturday morning. Concludes our.
Thank you for your report, Lord. Thank you for your work.